The Flannan Isles are a small group of uninhabited islands about 20 miles west of the Outer Hebrides in Scotland. Remote doesn't quite cover it. These are 7 tiny volcanic outcrops in one of the most hostile stretches of ocean in the world. The Atlantic here is not gentle. Waves regularly reach 40, 50 feet. In winter, the islands are almost completely inaccessible. The lighthouse was completed in 1899, built to guide ships through one of the most dangerous stretches of the Scottish coast. Getting supplies to the keepers was already difficult. There was no harbour, just a crane system to winch men and materials up from the water. 3 men were assigned at a time, rotating on a 6-week schedule. The keepers in December 1900 were James Duckett, the principal keeper, 43 years old, 20 years of experience, considered one of the most reliable men in the service. Thomas Marshall, his assistant, 28 years old, and Donald MacArthur, a substitute keeper filling in for a colleague who was ill. These were not amateurs. These were experienced professionals who understood the sea and knew their job. On December 15th, the light went dark. The relief vessel Hesperus was scheduled to arrive on December 20th. Bad weather delayed it for 6 days. When it finally reached the Flannan Isles on December 26th, the crew immediately noticed something wrong. No flag had been raised to signal their arrival. No keeper came down to the landing to meet them. The crane was in its housing. Everything was still. A sailor named Joseph Moore was sent ashore first. He found the entrance gate closed but not locked. The lighthouse door closed but unlocked. Inside, the clock had stopped. The fire had gone out. The oil in the lamp was low but not empty. In the kitchen, the table was set. A meal was half prepared. A chair was knocked over on its side. He searched every room, every outbuilding, the entire island. Nobody. He rowed back and reported what he'd found. A telegram went immediately to the Northern Lighthouse Board. 3 keepers had vanished. The lighthouse was abandoned. No explanation could be found. The board's superintendent, Robert Muirhead, sailed out to investigate. What he found only deepened the mystery. Muirhead's inspection turned up several important details. The lighthouse log had its last entry on December 15th. The entries for that day and the days before paint a strange picture. December 12th. Thomas Marshall writes that the weather is the worst he has ever seen in 20 years at sea. He notes that Ducat has been very quiet all day, that MacArthur has been crying. Think about that for a second. Experienced men, professionals, in tears, because of weather. December 13th. The storm continues. Marshall writes that all 3 men had been praying. December 14th. The storm eases. The men seem recovered. December 15th. No entry after midday. Now, those entries have been questioned by researchers for over 100 years. The original log is not publicly available in its complete form, and early newspaper accounts added details that may have been invented for drama. Some historians believe the emotional descriptions were embellished or fabricated entirely. What is confirmed? The log ends December 15th, and one of the 3 oilskin coats, MacArthur's, was still on its hook when the island was found. The other 2 were missing. This is the detail that matters most. If the men had gone outside voluntarily, to check equipment, to respond to damage, for any normal reason, they would have put on their coats. These were men who lived and worked in some of the worst weather in the world. They knew what happened if you went outside without your coat. 2 coats were gone, 1 remained, which means either 2 men went out and 1 followed in a hurry, or all 3 left so suddenly that 1 didn't have time. Neither option has a clean explanation. This is the most widely accepted explanation, and once you understand what rogue waves actually are, it's hard to argue with it. A rogue wave is not a regular storm wave. It's a massive, sudden wall of water that can appear with almost no warning, even in otherwise calm conditions. For a long time, sailors reported them, and scientists didn't believe them. We know now they're real. The North Atlantic in December is exactly the kind of place where they happen. The theory: 2 of the keepers went down to the western landing to check or secure equipment after storm damage. The 3rd followed, without his coat, because he didn't plan to be outside long. A rogue wave, or a series of waves, hit the landing while all three were there. All three swept into the sea. Plausible. Except, experienced keepers knew the protocol. You do not send all three men to an exposed cliff landing at once, precisely because of the risk of losing everyone. That rule existed for a reason. So why were all three there at the same time? Theory 2. One man snapped. 3 men. 6 weeks on a storm-battered rock in the North Atlantic. December. No contact with the outside world. The log entries, if genuine, already suggest the men were not in a normal psychological state. Could one of them have reached a breaking point? Could something have happened between them? An argument, a confrontation, that ended in violence? And then the third man, alone with what had happened, walked into the sea. There's no physical evidence for this. No blood, no signs of struggle, but the absence of evidence on an island that was exposed to 2 weeks of Atlantic storms before anyone arrived doesn't mean much. It's a theory that can't be proven. It also can't be fully ruled out. Theory 3. The island itself. This is not a forensic theory, but it has been part of this story since before the lighthouse was built. Local fishermen considered the Flannan Isles cursed. They called them the Seven Hunters. Passing boats would lower their voices, remove their hats. Strange lights had been reported on the islands for generations. Lights that predated any lighthouse. I'm not saying this explains anything, but there's a reason this story has never let go of people. There's something about a lighthouse, about a light that's supposed to be permanent, reliable, a promise to sailors in the dark, going out, going silent, with no one left to explain why. Some places, maybe, just take people. Here is what we know. 3 experienced keepers were alive on December 15th, 1900. They vanished sometime that day. 2 had their coats. 1 did not. No bodies were ever recovered. No formal inquest was ever held. The Northern Lighthouse Board concluded, for official purposes, that the men had been swept away by a wave. They installed safety chains along the cliff paths. They sent new keepers. The light was back on within days. Life continued. Ships passed. The Atlantic kept moving. The Flannan Isles lighthouse was automated in 1971. Nobody has lived there since. The buildings still stand. The light still works. If you wanted to visit today, and people do, occasionally, on chartered boats in summer, you'd find the same cliff paths, the same crane housing, the same views of the same brutal sea. And standing there in December, with the wind doing what the December Atlantic wind does, you might find it very easy to believe that something happened on that cliff that no official report could fully explain. You'd also find yourself asking the same question that everyone who has studied this case for 120 years eventually asks: where did they go? 3 men. 1 island. December 1900. The light went out. The men were gone. The sea said nothing. In the years since, the Flannan Isles case has inspired poems, novels, operas, films. Something about it refuses to let go. Maybe because the ocean is the oldest mystery there is. Maybe because a lighthouse is supposed to be a promise. And broken promises leave questions that never fully close. Or maybe it's simpler. Maybe 3 men died doing their job on a violent night. Maybe the sea took them the way it takes everything eventually. Without ceremony, without explanation, without leaving anything behind for the people asking questions 100 years later on dry land. We'll never know. And somehow, that feels right for a vanished archive case. Drop your theory in the comments. Rogue wave, something darker, or something else entirely. I read everyone. Subscribe for a new case every week. Next file is already open. Imagine you're a sailor. It's December 1900. You're somewhere in the North Atlantic off the western coast of Scotland, and the weather is getting bad. Really bad. The kind of storm that makes experienced sailors go quiet. But you're not worried, because somewhere ahead of you through the spray and the dark, there's a lighthouse. The Flannan Isles lighthouse, built 2 years ago specifically for nights like this. Inside that lighthouse, right now, are 3 experienced keepers whose entire job is to make sure that light never goes out. except the light has been out for 2 weeks. Nobody noticed at first. The weather was so violent that no ship could get close enough to check. But when the relief vessel finally reaches the island on December 26th, and the crew goes ashore, what they find makes no sense. The lighthouse is empty, the door is unlocked, the beds are made, the log is up to date. Dinner is half prepared on the table. 3 oilskin coats hang, well, 2 of them hang, on their hooks by the door. 3 men, gone. No note, no bodies, no explanation. The Flannan Isles lighthouse has been automated since 1971. Nobody lives there anymore, and to this day, nobody knows what happened to James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur.